Yeah. Well, there is. Yeah.
Okay.
Good, how are you? You too.
Aaron, get that wash, please, the wash. Just a moment, everyone, and we'll be ready to start shortly. Are you hearing me at home? Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we are.
Okay.
It's very quiet, no.
Okay, we're getting ready to start. We're trying to get doors closed so we can hear better in here. Okay, they've asked me to try again to see if you can hear me at home. Is the volume better or not?
Yes.
Yes, the volume is better, Dr.
Yeah.
Burke.
Okay, they've asked us to sit as close to the micro, to speak as closely into the microphones as we possibly can. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Indiana Commission on Aging meeting here on November 16th. We'll call the meeting to order this morning. And first of all, let me see who is here so we can see if we have a quorum or not. So I'll call roll. Margaret Smith, are you on today? Katie Ellman? James Gone?
Good morning, Good morning, Joanne. I'm here. It's Katie. My apologies
Okay.
for the delay in unmuting.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Katie.
you.
James Gone? Kelly Tungu is here. Deb Lambert? Dan Mustard is here.
Here.
Becky Onspa?
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning, Becky. I am here. Judith Schoen?
I'm here.
Hi, Judith. Jennifer
morning.
Lang? Good
Good
morning.
morning, everybody. I'm here.
Okay. Jennifer's here. Megan Springer? Okay. Well, we have 7 members. We don't have a quorum this morning. So let me just ask, we'll have to file the minutes, but were there any comments, additions, corrections to the minutes of the last meeting in September?
So,
Okay, hearing none, we will file the minutes, Dan. I know you reviewed them, and they will be filed and approved when we have a quorum. Okay, well, we have a very full agenda for the day and look forward to our presentations. And so with that, I'm going to start with our presentation for the Community Care Hub in Indiana, and Tori Brown is going to be starting that presentation. Thank you, Tori.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burke. Good morning, commission members and those who are visiting us online and who are here in person. This morning, I do have a slide presentation that I will pull up. Yes, thank you very much. And so this morning, what we're going to do, next slide, please. Our goal is obviously to introduce you to the Community Care Hub, the concept, our leadership team, and our strategic vision to support our aging Hoosiers while creating a sustainable network statewide network that elevates our local trusted agencies under the Pathways model. When you leave this session, what my hope is that you'll be more equipped to advocate on our behalf at the state and federal levels in support of this model, so that we can focus on continually providing the best quality and quantity of life for our older Hoosiers. Next slide, please. Our dedicated board and staff leadership are here on the screen. The first person there to the top left is Connie Benton-Wolf, who is joined us online this morning, was not able to be with us in person. And Connie is the board chair of the Community Care Hub of Indiana, which is a 501c nonprofit organization. My name is Tariq Brown, as Dr. Burke said when she introduced me. I am the board vice chair of Community Care Hub of Indiana. And then 3 additional individuals have joined me today. Jim Vandergrift, who is our executive director of Community Care Hub of Indiana. Jim will be providing some portions of our presentation for you this morning. Deborah Knowles Freeman is our Chief Operating Officer for Community Care Hub of Indiana, and will also be providing some context to our presentation this morning. Lisa Schneekloff is our Chief Compliance and Quality Officer for Community Care Hub of Indiana. And then Kelly Espelend is our Senior Vice President of Community Care Hub of Indiana. Now it's my pleasure to ask Jim Vandergrift to the podium to continue the presentation. Jim.
Thank you, Tariq. Good to be with y'all this morning. Yeah, there we go. Next slide. Kind of when we get done here, our objective is to share with you who we are as the Community Care Hub, what it is that we do, why it matters that the Care Hub even exists. And then at the very end, Tariq will be wrapping up with what it is that we could use help from you all. So if you would, next slide, please. So who we are. Next slide too, please. So Community Care Hub, the term itself, the hubs have been designated as a part of a national sanctioning driven by the Administration for Community Living. Originally, it was called Network Lead Entities. Basically, it was ACL's objective to try to bring call it somewhat fragmented, because there's when you look at the AAA space alone, there's over 600 plus AAAs across the country covering every county. When we get into the tens of thousands of other HCBS providers, quite honestly, we all do a good job at what we do, but it makes it very challenging when we're looking at volume of moving the lives of individuals within the space. And so that value proposition of being able to bring the network together to be a single contracting arm for specific regions or markets. And CMS, CDC have also gotten on board as a part of HHS's mission to see these community care hubs really expand. And initially, we were selected, Aging and In-Home, as the community care hub for the state of Indiana. And we really felt that there was value in us in partnering with SACOA. Tariq has been very progressive. So SACOA represents almost 25% of our aging population within inside of that demographic. And they quickly bought into the whole concept of what Connie envisioned with being able to create with Tariq. Thus, the Community Care Hub was created. And a big part of what it does is it brings that management services function that allows for the network as a whole, for all 15 AAAs within the state, to be able to contract directly with managed cares. We go to MLTSS, that is our initial launching point and what we do here, dealing with the contracting, compliance, IT, infrastructure. There's a whole host of things that need to happen, which we'll dive a little bit more into. Next slide, please. How quick did we evolve? The designation, if you look, only took place in November of 22. So right out a year ago, we got the designation. By March of 23, we already had formed within a matter of time the Community Care Hub of Indiana, putting the legal entity in place as a nonprofit. Also began to, as a part of that, bringing on other area agencies on aging which we will be sharing with you here shortly. Raising the initial capital it takes to launch an endeavor such as this. And if you look at it where we're at, we've got a total of 6 of us AAAs that are part of the initial framework, while all 15 are committed and signed letters of intent to be a part of the network of vendors, which also include all 6 of us, in order to help the hub move into MLTSS and be the representative for us to do the work. Next slide, please. So there's the 6 of us that currently make up the board for Community Care Hub of Indiana. And as a part of our commitment, we have all financially committed to raise the initial capital that was needed in order to launch the hub. So as we look at this endeavor, it's not only the leadership, but it's the financial commitment in order to make that happen. Next slide, please. What we do. And I can't read that far, so I'm going to have to look at my notes because I don't know what it is we do. If you really look at the left-hand, top left-hand box, the real impetus of everything that we do is to ensure that the Hoosiers have the opportunity to receive essential social care and trusted from local trusted agencies. And it's really about promoting aging in community. And that term is different than aging in place, because when we really talk about aging in community is allowing people to age in the place in which they wish to be, and improving the overall quality of life. And if you see down there, aging in community, there actually is a term for it, because it takes on a whole different stance than traditionally what I have, my mantra of aging in place, because quite honestly, some of what the place is, we need to help people where they're at in order to help facilitate them being able to reside where they choose to reside. And is really a part about what the hub does. What it is, we elevate the quality. I liken it to this. I try to think of how we make a good glass of juice back in the days of concentrate. I'm dating myself here because I don't even know if they sell concentrate anymore. But today you can have a mix of 15 different recipes amongst our network of AAAs, and trying to identify what that right mix of water, some like it a little bit sweeter, some like it a little bit less sweet. But what that does is it creates challenges to ensure that across the state, regardless of which county you reside in, you receive the highest level of service that has been demonstrated to be able to make a difference to help you age in community to your desire. And so a big part of what our focus is with the Community Care Hub, it brings the technology and infrastructure that allows us to actually see what's happening. So we can see where there's areas of opportunity to develop and grow. And so when we look at the continuity of the service delivery by staff, I assure you that as a network, all of us throughout the state are passionate about wanting to make a difference in people's lives. But there are elements, we call it best practices, that is we work together as the hub that allows us to look at those metrics from the time that we engage people, the time that it takes for us to, once we've identified that there's a need, to actually ensure that those services are provided and that they're moving the dial and helping the people to reside in community. So as a part of that, elevating to the highest level, as opposed to what we would traditionally do in, let's call it a member-driven organization. Why is it that the Care Hub is a better vehicle for this to happen, as opposed to I4A as an example? It's because of the infrastructure that's needed in order to make that happen. And that's what the Community Care Hub brings to the mix, to ensure that it almost provides the same effect of why there are franchises. A franchise has to demonstrate its ability to take a successful venture and replicate it with consistent continuity and determine a repeatable result. And so what the Care Hub does is provides all that infrastructure to ensure, regardless of which AAA is providing that service throughout the state, that each Hoosier is ensured to be able to receive the best of services and interaction from staff. Dr. Burke, I'm looking at you. You guys have questions already? I just, I saw the wheels turning. It was,
And so Jim, what you're saying then is if there's gaps in any of the service deliveries anywhere across the state, it's the community care hub's responsibility to fill those gaps.
absolutely. So, and we have it. I'm sorry. Dr.
That, I'm just going to piggyback on top of that or behind it. So if one AAA cannot for some reason respond to something, another one will if there's, in other words, there'll be continuity for the person.
That's correct.
Do I have that correct?
Absolutely correct. So in a sense, what you see is you see the resources within the state. If you see it today, there's a little over 500 people that are providing case management as an example under waiver services in the state. How is it that we're able to react if a given market has an increase in members, clients needing served, and yet we need to react? It allows us then to flex in the commitment of the agencies to share those resources. Ultimately, we need the member cared for, period. And we have the tools that allow us to react to that very quickly because we can see fairly real time what's happening from the time that somebody was referred to us being able to assign them, engage the member. We have that real time data, and then that oversight is provided from the community care hub. And a big part of that is our technology that enables that workflow to happen so we can react. And I get off topic. So another part of the hub, it's being able to retain the experienced long-term workforce that we have. If you think about it, it's how is it that we're able to ensure that as we move into pathways, we produce a better outcome for Hoosiers, and at the same time, we leverage the strength of what we have built over the last 40 plus years of dealing with the aging community. And what it does is it ensures that that workforce is deployed to provide the most value and to eliminate a lot of the waste that takes place and how traditionally we would have to try to address those services and how data is shared, how it's collected, how decisions are made. And that allows us to address that. And the last one is it lifts huge barriers for the MCEs. So as you look, as we go to MLTSS, one of the real challenges is trying to vet 15 providers. It's a very arduous lift. Having all of the compliance in place, the security and IT vetting, navigating that and managing those independently, I think we're much stronger as one unified body, which allows us to focus in on our strengths of how it is we deliver services in our communities. Next slide, please. And now it's Deborah Knowles Freeman's turn. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. So for the Community Care Hub, we are uniquely positioned here on this slide, as you'll see in the middle. So we have our MCEs who are supporting and servicing and making sure all of our compliance and complexity and quality is there, while we're supporting our network partners who have done this work for years. So we sit here squarely in the middle, and the text at the very bottom, again, focus on what Jim was saying, and that is a guiding star for us, is better outcomes for Hoosiers. That's at the forefront of everything that we do. Jim showed you in the slide before. You'll see here at the very top what are some of the specific services that we do from an administrative and operational infrastructure perspective. Our main focus under pathways is simply service coordination. There is opportunity in the future and as a part of a different arm of work that we do for value-added services and supports, but that is a little bit further down the line. Next slide, please. So you heard Jim talk a little bit about standardization. So in current state, we do have our 15 organizations that do great work, but it's done in a very different way. It's a different flavor, a different variety. We can't bring that same piece to the specific thing that we're doing with the NCEs, we have to standardize. So we've done a lot of work defining what those processes are, comparing it to our requirements in our SOW, mapping those, finding out where we have gaps that we spoke to earlier, and getting everyone aligned under that same standardized process. A strength that we'll have is automation. We'll talk to that here in just a little bit, of automating specific processes for our team so that we are not necessarily focusing so much on human capital, but anywhere that we can allow the system to help us there, we lean into that strength. And we're doing continuous process improvement. That is definitely a strength of the CCHI. You do something once or twice, you find out that doesn't work, you need to tweak it and add an additional piece so that everything is more efficient, more effective, again, to serve our members. And so we'll have continuous process improvement under this whole standardization piece. And then to the right for compliance and quality, Lisa's done an amazing job along with her team of helping us understand when you're contracting with a managed care organization, there are very specific ideals and properties and pieces, as Jim was talking to, from a risk assessment, security, how we handle member data, which is of the utmost importance. And all of our agencies don't necessarily have the exact safeguards in place. They have some, but maybe not the ones that are needed when you're dealing with the healthcare and managed care entity. And so bringing all of that into one place, having a technical assistance team that will help them bring things into alignment under that framework, having the commitment from our leadership team, as Jim mentioned, all AAAs have signed their letters of intent. We have our strategic partners. They are helping us to move forward and get the agency as a whole to come alongside as we move into pathways. So we're very close to working through all of those pieces, which are key and important to what we're doing. And then next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about how the technology is utilized in bringing the AAAs together?
Yes.
How does that technology differ from the state mandated system?
Mm-hmm. If you go to the next slide, that's exactly, you did, and I love it. I love it. So we have it on two fronts, right? From the associate perspective on the front end, they're gonna have a single source system that they have to utilize, where all of the data will be integrated in one place for them to easily assess it when they're with the member face to face, providing that type of support. And then they're not necessarily having to go to this application. I need to copy paste and put it in here. It's all in one single source system. There are efficiencies through the application as well that help them move through what we call the service delivery protocol. And then on the back end, we'll have compliance pieces in place to make sure that they've met all the requirements to be able to actually service that member. So there are, drug screenings, a lot of different other pieces. That's the one that comes to mind. But if you haven't checked off all those boxes, you're not allowed to serve that member. So that gives us the ability from an automated perspective in the system to keep that in line while servicing the member and keeping us aware of if we have any gaps from a member, or let's call it a service coordinator perspective. Let's say AIHS is off, but Socola has extra. We can easily assign that member and make sure they still have that support and continuity.
1,000 more questions, but I won't ask.
Feel free to send them over. We're happy to support that. And then talking a little bit more about linking the MLTS ecosystem. The goal here is integration, integration, integration. We don't want anyone to have to go to multiple places to access data, information, history on a member. It should all be serviced in one single source. And so that's what we're hoping to do here by pulling that data through our MCE partners that you see here at the bottom of the screen, where we have these data sharing agreements. And again, putting all of it at the fingertips of the service coordinator who will be in home and community supporting our members through the Pathways program.
So each of these plans have agreed to work with Community Care Hub and to integrate the Amplify system.
All three, yes.
Into their system.
So let's not think of it as like we're going into Anthem system, but they're providing data into Amplify, yes, so that we can see and service their members. You're welcome. Any other questions here before we go to our next slide? Okay, Yeah, oh, yes,
Well, I
ma'am.
do, but I don't know when to ask the question.
Feel free. Yeah, we're good.
All right, this is gonna be a simple question.
Mhm.
So I try to bring questions, I think, for the general public. Okay, I live up in rural Tipton County. All right. Area 5 out of Logansport is the area agency that serves Tipton County. Anthem and Humana get up there, trying to sell their products.
Okay.
I don't know how I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's what the public would see.
Mhm.
They're seeing these pathways, commercials on TV now.
Uh-huh.
They don't know what it is. Understand it. Okay. The one nursing home up there in the county is struggling. Okay. Just saying that. They all think they can still go get on Medicaid, put their loved one out in the nursing home. Go through another process that they don't understand. That's all right. This is the public.
Yep.
All right, here's my question. So let's say it's July 20th, 2024. So this is in play. So somebody who has signed up for Humana, enrolled in Humana, up there needs some service. Now, Community Care Hub is one of several providers of the correct companies. There's more than one, it's just not. Community Care Hub is one of several entities. That's the best word I can use. So the person up in Tipton isn't gonna know who Humana is gonna plug in to help them. That's Humana's choice.
Absolutely.
Get real simple here now. So Humana, so they may not choose Community Care Hub, might be one of the other providers. Is that random, or I know there's something in here that for 2 years.
Right. I can help with that. So under the current 2-year responsibility and kind of what's written into the contract, each MCE has created an agreement and a contract. We're in the process of finalizing those with CCHI. CCHI is just the umbrella company for those 15 agencies. So Area 5 that you mentioned is included in that umbrella. The way that we distribute our referrals are based on geographic location. So if that member that you're referring to, did you say Upton or Tripton? Tipton. The person that is in Tipton, when their referral comes through as a Humana member to our organization, we then assign it to Area 5 to provide that support. Now, also in current state, we only receive 50% of members as a part of this contract. And then there's an additional added caveat that there may be an ICM, like an independent care management agency that is also contracted with Humana that can receive that referral. So it would just be depending on going through that process of elimination, so to speak, where it goes. But if it comes to CCHI, the way that we have the state divided today for counties and the way that the agencies are set up will still be in place. What the benefit is that Jim was talking about earlier is, let's say we have neighboring agencies. If one can't get to Tipton, we have the ability to reassign so someone else can make that journey to support that member.
So Sequoia.
Sequoia could be an option, but not the only option.
Right.
If there are other agencies that maybe have more capacity in staffing, they then might be able to take that rather than having Sequoia take it.
Yeah, I got it. I'm just thinking geographically.
Yeah, that's what I
Yes.
was
In theory, yeah, if you come here, so we pick it up and then service that number.
Okay, and is this a face-to-face assessment or a phone assessment?
It's all based on member choice, but we do have face-to-face components as a part of our service delivery protocol.
Okay, and then to go back and ask one other question,
Mhm.
just for clarification. Humana would be or any of them would have the option of the choice of where this referral would go, as long as they're doing the 50%.
Yes, member choice is first, and then MCE choice comes second, depending on how they derive and separate the referrals.
Well, the members don't even know what any of this is, let alone say, I want the community care hub. Or I want this particular private management company, so they will, I mean, maybe some would, but few would know it.
Yeah, primarily the ones who already have an existing service coordinator at one of those organizations would know, I want Jane because I've been working with Jane for all these years,
They're
right?
just gonna know I have a service board.
Right.
And they're
Mhm.
not gonna know necessarily behind the scenes,
Right.
whether that's an independent case management
Mhm.
agency, whether that's an in-house. Could be Humana has hired their own.
Correct.
in-house service coordinators, or it could be community care.
Okay, just clarifying, just
Great
down to
question.
the general public
Mhm.
level, what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we only have one other slide before we get to questions. And this one does specifically touch on that very thing. So again, bringing us back to why it matters in the next slide. It's all about the people. It's supporting our Hoosiers. At the end of the day, the nuts and bolts of what we have to do as organizations, it matters. But at the forefront, and again, our guiding principle is supporting our aging Hoosiers. So that is, I think, what we have for today before we open it up to questions. And I'm sorry, I'm passing back to Tara.
But they always have something to say.
Well, how did you know, Kelly? No, I would just say, you know, what I hope this presentation has done for the commission members and those who are viewing is to help bring more clarity to the community care hub, the need to have such an organization. And I want to take you back to Jim's slides where he showed that timeline. Think about November 2022 to March of this year. We have moved at an exceptional pace. And we had to do that because there are many deadlines, you know, go live, there are these kind of readiness pauses that we've got to connect with our MCEs and make sure we're meeting those for our state partners and for the MCEs. We've been moving in warp speed. And it's really been impressive to see how we've been able to connect with all 15 agencies. We've talked with ICMs as well about joining Community Care Hub of Indiana, and really to get them to understand the goal here is to provide a higher quality and quantity for our older Hoosiers. How you all can help us, as I said at the beginning, we can, you all can certainly elevate your voices and advocate from a funding perspective at the local and federal levels, right? As Jim mentioned, we have been able to raise a significant amount of capital, but as you all know, this is a startup. And so startups oftentimes need more infusion to really get things moving the way that they need to. We're extremely excited about the steps that we've made. And we're also as excited about the movement the state has had now that they've got the website up, the commercials are out there, and we're looking forward to having some additional interactions with them from some scripting and talking points, because we do know that our community members are going to start calling. They already have. And what's really important to me, and it should be important to all of you, is that the message that they're hearing is consistent and it's the same. They have to hear that we're singing from the same hymnal. So I just want to thank you all again for giving us this space and opportunity to talk with you this morning. And if there are questions, we are here to answer them. Thank you.
Is the state supporting from a funding standpoint, community care hub at this point?
At this point, they are not. We have had some conversations around whether or not that would be an opportunity for them. So I wouldn't say that's out of the realm of possibility. I would just say we've elevated that and had some nice discussions with Leslie and others.
So it really has been federal funding through grants and private.
It's actually been self-funded at this point from the 6 strategic partners that you saw on that slide, Kelly. There are some ACL grant opportunities out there for community care hubs to go and grab a hold of. In fact, I believe the ACL put that in the hands of Sandy Markwood and US Aging's organization. And I do believe that Connie is planning on applying for one of those grants. So that obviously will help us as well.
Other people, let's open this up and see if there's questions while we have the opportunity to get some response here from Tori. Because,
There may be questions that are more in line for you to
Well,
answer.
and while people are thinking, let me say, I know this had to be a big lift for the area agencies. This is a lot to work out as we
Yes.
made this transition in Indiana from the position that AAAs were in and the work they were doing to this. This is a very different way to do business, so to speak. So, I mean, just want to recognize the hard work that's been done by the AAAs. And to clarify, Tariq, you said that independent case management, other entities may join this. This is not excluding any.
We have not excluded anyone, Dr. Burke. We've had some great conversations with Jen Lance at IPMG. We've had some discussions with CareStar and others. So it's not like we've said, you can't come on. It's come one, come all, because we all believe the more in line we are, the more aligned we are, the better outcomes we're going to have for our Hoosiers that are being served in this program when it launches.
Thank you. All right, opening it up to people who are online or others who are here in the room.
Dr. Burke, I just we've lost the video feed, you guys. I'm not seeing you all anymore. I'm only seeing Becky and myself.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
They've
Jen?
lost the video of us. They can't see us any longer.
Do we have technical support? Well, thank you, Jennifer. We could see you and we can hear you well. So while they're looking for some technical support here on this end, apparently you're still hearing me, so we can hear you. And I can't imagine there's not some questions out there today. So I'm opening it up for questions, comments.
I just would like to comment. I don't really have a question. I appreciate that presentation. I've talked with them, like Tarek has said. I just did want to reiterate there are independents that will continue to be that independent service coordination provider, and if that's the way everything goes with various people being that, we are very hopeful that the state is supportive in ensuring those individuals that already have a service coordinator be able to have that really smooth transition and continue with who they're with right now. We are a little concerned of some disruption on that July 1 flip the switch date. So we want to make sure in our discussions with MCEs, there has been some concern of how we make sure that everybody has that really smooth transition and is allowed to keep the same person they have right now, the same agency they have right now, no matter how the providers are noted. And we can see the screen again, by the way.
Yeah, and Jen, that's a great point. Thank you for elevating that. We also have been talking about that as well. We want to make sure that members have continuity with who they're with today so that as this change takes, our hope is that those organizations that are currently providing care management services, right, to that individual 60 and above on A&D, ends up staying with that organization as the service coordinators, at least at the beginning of this. Because you are absolutely correct. When you start breaking that relationship at go live, there could be some significant challenges there to get that right sized again. So thank you for elevating that.
Other questions?
I was just gonna make a comment. As I think through this, as I understand this, this is really advancing the work that the AAAs do from an accountability standpoint.
Yes.
So, having been in the network for many, many years and seeing how the AAAs operate differently, I think it's very exciting that they're now going to do this oversight. That's not the right word, but leadership to ensure that everyone is performing at the same level so that the network as a whole can meet the outcomes and the expectations of those managed care entities. Yeah. And if they are not, you know, this leadership team stepping in to ensure that they do. So I'm very excited about that, you know, seniors across the state.
And I appreciate you saying that, Kelly. You know, for me, several of us in the network have experienced managed care implementations in other states before. And so, you know, for me, I think I'm the most recent addition to it. Well, actually, Carla Fales would be the most recent addition to the network who's been through one of these before. And understanding what managed care is, how it looks, I knew right away, December of 2020, when Jen Sullivan said, we're moving into an MLTSS environment, I knew what that meant. And I knew that quality and compliance and all of these nuances, consistency, these were going to be things that would carry the day for us in the future. And if we were not prepared to respond accordingly, we would find ourselves on the outside of that business. And I just couldn't allow that to happen. And so, you know, the first thing that we did at SEQOA is we developed a compliance area, a healthcare compliance area. Nobody told me to do that. I did that because I knew it would be part of this whole framework when this kind of go live. Partnering with AIHS on the technology side is wonderful because we do gain those kind of, I'll call them those consistency check-ins and safety valves, if you will, so that if something isn't happening as it should, we can deploy a strike team to an agency to go, what's going wrong here? How do we get this back on track so that we don't find ourselves at the end of 2 years outside of this project? The other piece that I would say to the Commission on Aging members and how you can help us is, I don't know that 2 years is enough time to really understand intimately whether or not we're hitting that mark center mast 9 out of 10 times. And so my ask perhaps might be that there be some discussion and conversation around maybe moving that 2-year time frame out a little farther so that there is more time to really intimately understand what are the outcomes and impacts of having a hub like this in place.
And what would be the appropriate avenue for advocating for that part?
So I think, I mean, honestly, it would start internally. We as the AAAs and our our advocacy pieces and lobbying teams would need to really begin digging in to identify, how we would go about trying to get that statute language changed, Kelly. I don't think that that's going to be an easy thing, but I do believe that we've got enough time between now and the end of that 2-year period to potentially build some support along the way that might get that time frame elevated up a little bit.
Is that time frame January 1st, 2026?
So I believe it would be, I don't know that it'd be January, Dr.
Or
Burke.
July.
July. It would be July 1. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Can someone talk a little bit about your thoughts on aging in community versus aging in place?
Jim?
Yeah, actually, the aging in place.
You got to come to the mic because you got people.
Sorry, actually, there's really good, well, I don't want to go to the slide deck because if you go to the slide deck, well, I would, for other people to be able to see it, because then they're going to lose the camera and we'll have to struggle to get it back. When we look at aging in community, it's really talking about being able to keep people connected, not only from a health perspective, healthy, but physically connected to the community in which they reside, in more of the full social supports. And so that shift from aging in place, there are individuals we serve today that their place is actually jeopardizing their health. So what do we need to do as a community? We're impacting and improving the environment in which they live, not necessarily moving from the environment, but improving it to address their overall health. And so aging in community, if you have a copy of the slide deck, it really helps to clarify that it's more than just allowing you to reside where you live today. Did that help or?
It does. And I think it's an important point. I've never liked the term aging in place because I think in essence, it creates an unrealistic expectation with people that the state will throw whatever resources we have to allow them to live in their home. We don't have the resources, especially in the coming years, to be able to do that. And so I think, the idea that you might not be able to stay in the place where you're living right now, but you can stay in your community. And I think that that's an important point that I think we should all adopt the language.
Thank you for sharing that.
Other people? I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, kind of a comment.
Yes.
I sat in a presentation on the dementia state plan this week. That's underway. And we'll be hearing about that in a little later presentation here today, I think, from the division, as they implement some of this. People with dementias often end up in nursing home facilities. Could you comment on, and maybe this doesn't even make sense, but anyway, how the community care hub is an asset to taking care of people with dementias in communities?
Thanks for that question, Dr. Burke. I'll answer it this way. In the current state, our primary focus is service coordination. That shouldn't be confused with our vision and desire to build in other kinds of supportive services, value-added services as part of our operation in the future. But we've had, and it's been kind of interesting because people that know me know I'm a visionary. I'm out there and I'm thinking big. And many of my state colleagues, partners here have said, Tariq, stay focused on service coordination right now. So it's been great that they've kept me grounded. But we don't think that Community Care Hub is only going to be an avenue for our network of providers for just service coordination. We've thought about and talked about building other provider networks into the hub that do get at some of those areas and items that you've mentioned, Dr. Burke. Dementia and Alzheimer's, our care coach work, their caregiver support, transportation. There are a ton of different things that we know the hub could handle as a management services entity for our partner agencies. But right now, our focus is primarily on service coordination and pathways. Yeah, go ahead.
And then the other component of that is with working with the MCEs, they already have certain programs for supports in the community for those specific things, dementia, caregiver, et cetera. So we have to work and continue to build our relationship with them for any of the programs. Our team has mentioned that our what we call the or one that we want to see scaled across the network to build it in. So we have to continue to with our MCE so they can choose the programs that we have in-house for CCHI to be able to support them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. This was very clarifying this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, we'll move along and get an update from the Division of Aging, and that Andrew Bean, our Deputy Director, will give the update. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Good morning. I'm in the acting director. The title doesn't, it just doesn't roll off my mouth very well, so I appreciate you, the Deputy Director. I'm much more comfortable with that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I miss Leslie dearly, by the way. No. Good morning, Commission on Aging, and good morning, everybody who is virtual. Really great to kind of be here and to provide kind of some updates for everybody in terms of what we're doing at the Division of Aging. Obviously, you heard a lot from Tariq today about the hub, and that kind of that relates and that has some overlap as well. But I wanted to kind of flag some more purely aging kind of focuses that I mean, obviously we'll have some touch. I mean, like you mentioned dementia, and that has a lot of overlap in a lot of spaces, and we're doing a lot of work with that right now. So good to hear you mention that, and I will have some updates around some of the work we're doing there. First on my list is the Division of Aging Adult Protective Services team submitted a comment to the Administration on Community Living for the proposed APS rule that came out a couple months ago on Monday. And that rule was, and so we submitted that comment. I will share that I will send that file out to the board. I did not get the chance to send it this morning as for your review, but we were able to comment on the rule. It was a very big rule because this is the first, I think, foray ACL has taken into actually doing a proposed rule for APS ever. And so there was a lot of stuff in there to review and to comment on, and really just want to applaud our APS team for all the work that they did. They did a pretty Herculean task in going through that entire rule and actually getting a really nice, meaningful response to ACL. So that was filed on Monday with the Federal Register. And so that should be available to review if anyone wants to review, and I will send that out to people, as I said before. Second on my list, expedited waiver eligibility was, we came out of the PHE and it went live statewide, I believe, on Tuesday. Rebecca, if you're on, if I'm wrong there, keep me honest, but we went live statewide on Tuesday with the new, with the permanent authority EWE rollout, which is going statewide. All AAAs will be able to leverage the expedited waiver eligibility authority to get people into waiver services faster. So that was really exciting that we pretty much had a seamless kind of from the PHE to the permanent authority, a pretty seamless transition to where we didn't have really any gaps in terms of the program not being live. So really proud of the team for getting that kind of moving and actually aligned over time. Dr. Burke, you look like you might have a question. Okay, I want to make sure that if feel free to stop me on that.
We can come back to this too later and then get on the topic to cover. But the last time that I think Leslie was here, we raised a question around overall timelines for AAA's to complete assessments and a concern about the expedited eligibility being shifted over to the AAA's. And I think her response was that they were working with the AAA leaders to identify, how best to support them through this transition.
Yes.
We're still seeing some extended timelines, which creates some concern with the expedited waiver, because some of the AAA's are creating expedited eligibility teams that they're directing. But I'm not even sure what my question is answered, but how has the state been working with the AAA's to decrease the timelines for those initial assessments?
Absolutely. No, that I think so. We are, I'm not sure if Leslie mentioned it specifically. We are working with the AAA's as well as some other stakeholder partners in a eligibility work group to really look at what some of the, and this goes to not just EWE, but goes to actually regular eligibility, but looking at those kind of data points that we can start really having more robust conversations about how we measure this and how we make sure we kind of hold accountability in terms of those timelines as well. And so to compare EWE to regular eligibility is kind of, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's related. And I think that work will inform how we look at EWE across time too. I think we are also with the new rollout. There are some logistical and administrative shifts that happen in terms of what the permanent authority looks like versus what the PHE authority looks like in terms of kind of things in which we had to programmatically do in order to leverage the permanent authority. And so we will be looking at how do we make sure that we measure those with kind of the new component. And I wouldn't even say components, they're just new process that we're dealing with on that front. So we're looking at how we're going to measure that over time. I think it's and looking at the metrics that are going to be the most meaningful, but we're also outreaching with the AAA's on this eligibility work group in order to make sure that we are focusing on what the times are. I believe all AAA's, and then we do have IHCA on there as well, who is kind of representing kind of the, I think, a larger group of assisted living providers, but also just kind of that similar concerns that you're kind of voicing in terms of making sure that we are working on getting that done so that people are getting services quicker on EWE. If you, what I would say too is if you do want to outreach to me at any point and talk through like the progress on that, and please feel free to email me and I can give you kind of more specific updates that can move through that, because it is a process that's taking a little bit. You know, we have to talk through like what with each AAA, what are we looking at, how we're looking at it, making sure that we're actually being meaningful across the whole network with that. But I definitely understand the recognition of the getting times down, and there are times that are a little bit longer than others, for sure.
Hi, I just wanted to add that we also were able to obtain some extra funding through the HCBS funds. And so the rates for waiver intake in the ADRC contract are going to be adjusted. They haven't been changed since 2018. So we'll be amending their contracts to increase those rates.
Thank you, Erin.
I have a question. Again, I'm just going down to the concrete level. So as the pathways commercials, well, I don't know what you call it, marketing outreach, I don't know what you call this, but anyway, messaging, there we go. As the pathways messaging goes out across the state, there's not a phone number on there to call yet. Is that correct? There's not on the messaging yet, correct? Okay.
It's actually something very catchy. There's a number off the top of my head. Yeah, it is on the website.
Okay. Now, if someone, again, I'm going to go to my county, sees that and may not need it just now, but knows soon, and they call that number, what would they be told about eligibility? Who they go to, who they need to talk with? What is that in part of that messaging? Would they discuss that?
Yes. I mean, that will be the messaging will go to the questions about eligibility and kind of how to get into the pathways program. We'll go to the enrollment broker kind of conversation, and that entity will then advise.
So somebody calls right now and says, well, you know, my loved one's not doing well. We're managing now, but I don't understand Medicaid. I don't understand how I see if this would even work for me. They would get referred to
Maximus, it's what it sounds like.
Yes.
Maximus. He's now.
And I said, yeah,
Right now.
Maximus, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know
Yes.
if Maximus was alive now on this or not. So, yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Hey, Joanne, I can tell you,
So we
Joanne,
go to the enrollment broker,
Mhm.
but the determination's done by the AAA.
Everything is still as it is today, right? So the pathways to education is just, this is coming, we're transitioning to pathways, this population's moving to managed care, but all referrals for services are still going through the AAA.
Yes.
Nothing's changed there.
hey, Joanne,
And the eligibility, help me, because you probably said it and I just didn't get it. But the eligibility determination as of July 1
It's still the AAA.
for 1 year.
1 year, yes.
Just clarifying.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
So beyond, any other questions on expedited waiver eligibility? Happy to keep that on the forefront if there's any questions.
Joanne,
Anybody
can you
in
hear me?
Virtual land?
Joanne, can you hear me?
Judith, you have a question?
I do. I called the 877 number and they told me that Pathways was not available yet. They could take my name and my phone number.
Judith, if you have a question and you might want to put in the chat, we can get back to you on that too. It looked like you might have a comment. So third on my list, wanted to mention this is we kind of started doing this about a month ago. We are now, the Division of Aging is working with our partners at eImagine, who manages CAMS case management system for the Division of Aging to do outreach to all 16 AAAs over the period of the next couple months to basically do CAMS outreach sessions where we talk to the AAAs and their staff about pain points that they have, issues that they're having with CAMS, ways in which we can better facilitate that relationship and the relationship with the case management system. We met with area 6 and 9 about 2-3 weeks ago, and then I actually came back from Crown Point yesterday, meeting with area 1, with the Imagine team, the Division of Aging team, as well as the relevant AAA staff who deal with kind of all areas in CAMS. It spans from financial to case management. And so we had a lot of different staff members there with a lot of different questions. And they've been very positive up until this point. We've talked with a lot of folks and got a lot of feedback already where I think we can start moving in kind of a better direction on that front. So I wanted to kind of give you an update that that's what we're doing at the Division of Aging to help build better kind of bridges on that front. Dr. Burke, you mentioned the Pathways website. I just wanted to mention that it is live, and the URL is www.in.gov//pathways/ So, and we will make sure that we get that out to the commission as well, in notes and stuff.
Students said she called the number on the website and they told me Pathways was not available now. They would take my number and get back to me.
Judith, I don't know, you didn't hear OMPP step, but they said they will address that. Wanted to, related to Pathways, the waiver public comment period opened, and both the waiver that is going to transition over to DDRS, the under 60 population from the A&D waiver when we go live with Pathways, that is posted, as well as the 1915C waiver for the over 60 Pathways folks. Both of those are posted on separate links, and you can access that. And we can send out the state site if anybody doesn't have that, so that you can navigate to that website. Kelly, did you have any questions you wanted to talk through on that?
Yeah, I mean, we have been in conversation with that seems just in terms of the waiver amendment that is out for public comment now, as we understand it, is the intent of the state to simply not rock any boats.
Move it over. Yeah.
We're just moving everything over to position ourselves for the transition of these waivers to beads.
Yes.
And the transition to the health.
Yes.
Are there any services that do you see any implications for any services that are delivered today to be impacted by this change?
Off the top of my head, I don't have any that comes to mind in terms of that are going to need to change as a result of kind of any unintended consequences. I think I think as we move forward and we kind of continue to talk through this with stakeholders and do the kind of public comment period, we might get some feedback and might get some visibility on things that, come up. But I think, Kelly, going to your first point, the intent is for really to move things over and to not have any abrasion come from trying to reinvent the wheel there. I think logistically, that moving it to DDRS from the Division of Aging and moving to OPP, there are administrative things that do shift, but in general, the intent is to just move them over and make sure that we're not hurting members or the providers in that kind of transition. So
nothing crazy in the way that is going to change. This is the next step in the process.
Next on my list, I wanted to update on progress on the 2023 Dementia Strategic Plan that is being drafted and will be submitted to the legislature on December 1st of this year. Shannon Effler came to this commission I think the last time and discussed the progress with the council as well as the Alzheimer's Association, and was really excited to hear all of that, the progress. Shannon has submitted a draft to the Division of Aging, and we are reviewing that internally currently to make sure that everything is aligned and make sure that we are that essentially we dot the i's and cross the t's, I think. But making sure that everything is aligned with the strategic vision, what we submit up to our folks in our legislative office, understand what, if there are any recommendations that we want to flag as kind of standing out or need some outreach on, that we do that. We want to be very proactive and make sure that we're not being reactive to that. But overall, I think it's really positive. We're in the process of reviewing it, and then once we submit it to the legislature, I think we can probably share the document with this group at some point. I need to check on what the logistics around that are, but I'm happy to do that whenever we can. So,
I have a question just to clarify funding streams for the dementia specialists.
yes.
There's going to be a hires in the
So
division of aging for that.
Yes.
And then there will be.
And I would just clarify that it's the dementia coordinator that would be in the division of aging versus the dementia care specialists, which are going to be out of AAAs.
Okay, say that again. So the dementia services coordinator
Yes.
will be in the division of aging.
Correct.
And the dementia specialist will be out in the AAA. Correct. The funding stream for that is what?
So we, the Alzheimer's Association advocated for an additional funding stream for that. So that actually came from this last budget session. And that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's coming from the state budget for
Yes.
that. And the dementia coaches out in the AAAs, which is a separate program, the funding for that's coming from where?
So that is HCBS on dollars currently. We were able to get some additional monies from those pandemic funds that support that program.
So that came from,
That would be federal dollars. That would be federal dollars.
okay, federal for those, state for the specialists. Okay, just clarify. Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Berkey, we're anticipating my updates on that. We are working through the description. So in terms of the dementia coordinator position, we have submitted kind of a JAQ and a PCN kind of description to our to state personnel to kind of do their administrative process of reviewing before we can post the position and everything. But we have submitted that. That was one of Leslie's big things before she went out on maternity, was to finish the description and get that submitted. So that is in process. I admittedly I asked for an update, and I think it's just in process, and there's not necessarily a regular timeline that gets associated with it. They have a couple kind of an internal review and then an external review, and so it just takes a little bit of time, but that is in. And then with the dementia care specialist position, we have been meeting with Shannon as well as Chris Malise from I4A and David Sklar from the Alzheimer's Association, as well as Dr. Council for the Division of Aging, to talk through what those requirements look like, and ensuring that we get buy-ins from the AAAs, because each AAA might have a little bit of a different kind of structure and way that they deliver those the dementia care specialist kind of services that are associated with that. So making sure that we get buy-in. I think Kristen's been very great about setting up times. We actually, I think, we've been meeting this week, and we're looking to have a draft this week, next week, a second draft this week or next week for kind of final comments internally, and then moving to the AAAs to get their feedback on that before we then finalize and then submit those, and then the AAAs will be able to post those jobs for their spaces once we get that finalized. So progress being made, and I think we want to look to have those kind of up and running and hired in the first quarter of 2020. So, as early as possible. So.
I think has been trying to speak and we can't hear her. She says, I have serious concern. I'm on the front lines right now and we have many clients very upset. DSNP is in open enrollment right now. I have several clients that have been removed from Medicaid altogether or changing their status from QMB plus to QMB. This changes which plan and benefits they are available for, and if they will be available for pathways, also whether they have to pay for their Part D. And then she added, this is stressing families greatly and causing emotional harm. Most of the companies are saying just write them as the state has approved because we get paid either way, but this is not helping the clients. Part B.
So. I can read it out in the microphone. That's it. Sorry. So Judith's comment is, she has serious concerns. I'm on the front lines right now, and we have many clients very upset. DSNPs are in open enrollment right now. I have several clients that have been removed from Medicaid altogether or changing their status from QMB plus to QMB. This changes which plan and benefits they are available for, and if they will be available for pathways. Also, whether they have to pay for their Part D. This is stressing families greatly and causing emotional harm. Most of the companies are saying just write them as the state has approved because we get paid either way, but this is not helping the clients. And Judith, you were correcting I'm assuming you were saying Part B versus Part D on your first comment. So you meant Part B rather than Part D for paying for. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And Chuck, I just saw your message. I will slow it down.
We will take that back and look into it. I would say that some of the.
Could you introduce?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Holly Cunningham Piggott. I am the Director of Care Programs and will be overseeing Pathways once it's launched for OMPP. And we'll take that back. There are some Medicaid changes happening because of the end of the PHE. And so we probably just need to make sure that the DSNP brokers know where to direct those folks if they're changing from QMB plus to QMB only and so forth. So I would say that there are probably definitely people that are changing and there hasn't been any movement for the last 3 years, obviously. So we'll just need to make sure that they get connected. And I'm sure our AAA folks will be glad to also take referrals for some of these individuals too, to help them get back on Medicaid if it's an issue.
Yeah, Judith had raised that with me a couple weeks ago that people were being denied. And it's a problem when they're trying to be in this enrollment period. So.
And Judith, does this does relate to the email interaction we had too, right? Earlier this week. I want to make sure that I'm connecting the dots there.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I think and your comment, I would just add, Holly's absolutely right. I would just add to your comments. I think if you can, when you're talking to members and understanding what their specific scenario is, if you can share with us if they have member information that we can look up and actually see what's happening at the detail level in terms of that interaction, like if they're moving from QMB plus to QMB, that's a big move because they're going from full Medicaid to partial payments where we only pay the Part B premiums and the cost sharing. And so that would impact their pathways, whether or not they would be in pathways because partial duals are not pathways eligible. And so the details would be very helpful on that front. What you kind of put in the chat that does give me some perspective. I would also say that, I believe that OMPP continues to meet with the State Health Insurance Assistance Program regularly to try to give them more information around what's going on with pathways and everything. So that could be another forum that OMPP, I think, could leverage in order to get information out and to make sure that there's clarity to brokers as well as the shift counselors. They're doing a full education with at the SHIP regional meeting for pathways. And he said it's next month, and that will be next month. So that should provide more clarity and more visibility into what's going on to the brokers and to the SHIP counselors.
Well, this seems like this is a really important issue, and I'm going to ask that I don't know where this comes from, OMPP and Division of Aging give us an update on this at the January meeting. what's going on in this situation.
Judith, totally understand you're not CHIP and everything, and apologies. I know that that's not, we don't want to conflate the two. I think maybe let's talk offline and I know Holly probably has been in communications with you too. If there's a better way in which we can get brokers' information outside of the state health insurance assistance program, let's have a conversation. I think to try to figure out the best ways that we can get you the information so that you feel more comfortable in your advocacy too. Burke, you preempted my comments on the dementia care specialist and the dementia coordinator position, so I think we're good there. No, I think that takes care of pretty much all my updates.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other questions that anyone has or comments? Many moving parts right now. To try to smoothly move along. The eligibility issue is one I don't hear about again.
That's another one you want to add it as the eligibility kind of issues.
Well, we need to be sure that we're not dropping people and causing problems out there. So I think you'll learn more when you talk to Judith offline, but we need to follow on that so we don't have people that are left.
Absolutely.
Without service or without adequate service.
Yep. I understand.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now to the advisory committee reports. The only thing I would say on the Living Longer, Living Better Collaborative, I'm leaving this on. We worked extensively on this a couple years ago. I continue to work at local levels to work with our local politicians on issues such as ordinances related to shared living, particularly accessory dwelling units. I have a concern that our local communities are not aware of the impact of the deinstitutionalization of the care of vulnerable older people in Indiana. And that will impact first responders who will be needing to go out and help people in wherever they're living if they fall. These ordinances for single family homes, in some communities certainly are not helping with intergenerational living. That's going to be required as people will need to move in with their younger relatives for care. So we have some things to deal with at the local community level. And that's what this Living Longer, Living Better Collaborative was about. I don't know how we talk with some of our groups. I've been thinking about some of our county commissioners, our mayors, maybe a need, as we talk about the Pathways program. I don't know if we've done messaging to some of those groups or not, but this really is impacting. You talk about state aging in the community, they're not prepared for it. So I don't know, I'm just planting a little seed here for some thought in how we might better help those particular county and city officials better understand what Pathways is. I think I'll ask for a response back January on that, on any thinking people might do. I know this is a heavy lift, but wow, I mean, this is really important because we don't have infrastructure at the local level because we've relied on Medicare and Medicaid, and it's been federal and state programs. So we used to have county nursing homes. I'm not advocating we go back to that. I know why we've moved away from that. We've had township care at one point in time. But I'm just saying local communities are going to have to step up to the plate. They're not ready for it. We need to help them better understand this program so they can better work at this. And that's what I have to say on the Living Longer, Living Better Collaborative. Shared decision making. Judith, if we can't hear you today, okay. Erin's going to speak.
She put it in the chat. She said supportive decision has another meeting with judges on November 30th for a possible CASA and guardian court. Thank you.
They've been actively working. I spoke with Judith a couple weeks ago on getting passes in the local court. So Judith, we'll hope to hear from you in January, and hopefully this Division of Aging keeps working with technology here to try to make this work. So apparently we've had some Zoom problems today too. So anyway, we'll get a full report from you on this committee's work in January. Thank you. Emergency housing, Deb is not on today. So we'll move along. Family caregiving. The Family Caregiving Supports Advisory Committee, I am very happy to announce that Kelly Tungate will be chairing that committee for us. And so the people on that committee should be hearing from Kelly here in the next while. Kelly, would you have any comments as to your, on this committee or your thoughts on it?
No, I, as I've emphasized in the past, I really appreciate the state's, the emphasis that the state is placing on ensuring extended service availability for all parents, but have a special interest in family. So I'm really interested in how we will help support to as new entities come into play, whether it's enrollment programs, whether it's the search for like all those types of things. So again, just emphasizing the appreciation that I have for the state to focus on supporting caregivers and following programs and services.
Well, I think this is, thank you, Kelly. I think this is going to become an increasingly important area for us to look at here at the commission because families are going to be relying more and more on informal caregivers. They don't even call themselves caregivers, they're just families helping each other, neighbors, friends, etc. And I'm very interested. The reason I have gone to the support of having advisory committees to the Commission on Aging is because I think we need to have a broader reach across the state. I'm concerned about health disparities. With the state, as we know, we were last at one of those state scorecards.
We have improved significantly with up to 20.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those of you who are online, it says, yeah, they're continuing to work with this, the Division of Aging, and we are making progress in this state with supported family caregivers. We still have some work to do. So thank you. Housing supports. Yeah.
Yeah, when we formed this committee last year, I didn't realize how much it would be drinking from a fire hose. And there's so much going on with housing and so many groups that are currently working on this. And I'll try to be brief because Kristen has some really important information that she'll be sharing related to housing. The Center for Aging and Community are working on some studies in Indiana. Housing and Community Development Authority, or IHCDA. FSSA is working on some research into housing and how it impacts services. The Indiana Department of Health, the Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning, Environmental Resiliency Institute, the Corporation for Supportive Housing. The Indiana Legislature has their own housing task force.
the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, and then, as I mentioned, the Indiana Association of AAAs. A lot of different folks are working and looking at the topic of affordable housing and making sure that it's accessible. It's a huge issue, and it's only going to become more so as we see kind of the peak of the boomers and their aging process. Right now, there is a shortage of housing. Just the inventory alone of available housing is really low. And part of that is because of the trend in building. If you go by most new subdivisions, we're building cubes. You know, we're able to get the most square footage on the smallest footprint by building two-story houses. And those are very difficult to make accessible. The 4-bedroom ranch houses or the 2 or 3 bedroom ranch houses that are on one level there's a lot of competition for those because they tend to be starter homes for people. And so older adults are competing with folks who are getting into the housing market for the first time. Trying to find those houses that can be made accessible. So that's a real challenge. You know, as Dr. Burke mentioned, zoning is another big issue, not only for the additional housing units that can be put on one lot, but also for the amount of square footage. So in order, again, to stay within the square footage regulations, you would have to have a bigger lot, and a lot of zoning doesn't allow for that right now. Workforce obviously is another big issue with the supported portion of housing. And there are several groups that are working on that. A couple of the things that we'll have to keep in mind as a commission. Indiana currently has some of the weakest tenant protections in the nation. And so that is going to be something that we'll have to address when we're looking at making housing affordable and accessible. Is, you know, just how do we address that? And then we will certainly need to partner with the Home Builders Association and the Landlords Association. They definitely will need to be at the table. And they currently have very powerful lobbies, and they also have a lot of representation with seats in the legislature. And so they will certainly have to be at the table if we're going to address some of the issues that we'll be facing moving forward. I think that one other area that we have to look at, and I'm very thankful that folks mentioned the idea of aging in community rather than aging in place, because I think a part of this will have to be looking at some new models of how we serve people in the community, and possibly mirroring something that we have been doing for quite some time with folks with disabilities, where people can share a dwelling and have support from qualified caregivers and staff, and then they can split some of the costs. And so I think that's a model that we will also have to look at. And I will do a formal presentation possibly at the January meeting or at the next meeting after that, and share the report that we have developed. But then in terms of more information, I know Kristen has something that she will be sharing, and I'm looking forward to having her explanation of that. So there will be some more information forthcoming. It has really been a pretty sizable task just to pull together, and we have links for all of the information that we've been pulling together in some of the different surveys and some of the research that's being done right now. So happy to share that.
And with the audio, it's very spotty, so I'm not sure like all for.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, well, thank you very much, and we'll get you on the agenda for a presentation for January. Group. Thank you. Unless Katie wants to do something else, she's actually the program chair, so she and I will talk offline. Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate your work and your report. Kristen, we have given you 30 minutes today. We are looking forward. Yes. Okay, Kristen Lace, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kristen Mahi, CEO of the Indiana Association of Area Agencies on Aging. And today I want to start with the PD preliminary draft 3449, Choice and Commission on Aging. And I want to get your feedback. This is a bill that will be proposed by the I4A. And it addresses the membership of the Commission on Aging and choice boards so that they are more inclusive of folks where we think we need additional expertise or representation. So the overall goal of both sets of language are to bring somebody with housing expertise to each of the boards, to explicitly state in code we need a person receiving services under these programs or a caregiver on both these boards. And we want to also include representation of the direct service workforce. So that's the goal. We also want to eliminate one of the constraints in the Commission on Aging that might help us find more people to fill some of the vacancies that exist. And that is to eliminate the requirement that we have to have one member from each congressional district. We would leave in the requirement that not more than 2 residents of the same county may be appointed as members of the commission. So we're still trying to assure this isn't just a commission of people living in central Indiana or in Marion County. But we felt like that the congressional district requirement created a barrier to potential persons who would be good members. So with that all said, the first page, let's see, I guess it's the second page. The second page of the PD is the language that amends or proposes to amend the Commission on Aging statute. And you'll see on line 8, that's where we strike out 8 through 10. That's where we strike out some of the language related to congressional district. And then line 13 through 25 is where we try to broaden or be more intentional, I should say, around members of the commission. So this language specifies a nonprofit organization focused on housing development or housing services for individuals with disabilities and the aging population. At least one member who is a direct provider of or a service worker employed to provide services through the division, and at least one member who is a recipient or caregiver of a recipient of services provided through the division. So let me stop there and see if there are any comments or questions about that language. And I'm really happy to hear if you don't like these bills at all, or if you support these bills. We definitely don't want to do anything that would run in opposition to what the Commission on Aging and the choice board members would want to happen to these boards.
Kristen, I have
feedback
if you can hear me.
Okay. So since I come from far north, most people ignore us, and having representation to all districts is important. From Judith.
So, Judith, I agree with you. We have upwards of 16 members on the Commission on Aging. There are only, is there 9 congressional districts? Trying to remember, 9 or 7, 9 congressional districts. So there's plenty of availability to ensure that that representation is spread out. So are you saying you would oppose removing that language?
I'm going to try this. Yes.
You know, this is so important. I'm really concerned that people be able to participate and be able to hear people and that they be able to hear us. This is important, and I think it's personally, I think we need to look at these things a lot because we've had unfilled vacancies. We've had terms that have gone on and on and on that need to be addressed. We need more inclusion. We have a need. I mean, housing is a severe issue in Indiana for our population. We haven't really had representation there. The caregivers on the board or a consumer. It goes on and on. So I understand the need to look at this. I'm just concerned that people can't participate because of technology issues. And I don't know what to do with that today.
Well, I'm certainly able to, if you want to email me your comments. We're not going to be like voting on this language. I want to hear your comments. And so whether those come via email or through chat or verbally, if we're able to have audio, any of those options would be helpful. And this is a preliminary draft. This is not the language that would be necessarily submitted. This is not a draft that would get, this is not the official bill. Let me say it that way.
Can I ask a question on lines 24 and 25, services provided through the division? Can you provide some clarity? Is that through FSSA at large? Is it through the Division of Aging?
I think it would be, so the Commission on Aging is an advisory body to the Division of Aging. And I think the way this language reads, it would be a Division of Aging service. So Older Americans Act, Choice, Social Services Block Grant, et cetera.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify. So this would not be inclusive in the future of those individuals.
That's a good point.
Through pathways or through these.
That's a good point. Yeah, I really hadn't thought about that. So we don't necessarily want to exclude those caregivers and waiver participants.
Yeah, I want to echo that because that's been a real concern of mine as we move over to OMPP and we don't really have that designated anywhere. But from what I can see of the current statute, the Commission on Aging is to look at older people in Indiana. And I would hope that this would not exclude and the MLTSS people. So that I really echo what Kelly said. I would think that needs clarity in this.
Good point.
Because I really have been trying to get that. But I really, somehow that needs to be, and I don't know the B side of this.
Well, I think we can broaden the language of services provided through the division or under a home and community-based service waiver. It can be that simple.
Okay.
It's not like a big hairy deal to put some language in there, but the whole concept that we don't want to, we want to be inclusive of persons potentially receiving waiver services is I think the major point. And we'll adjust the language too.
Yeah, I just would wonder too, part of the point that Dr. Burke is making, if the commission's role is to serve as an advisory capacity to the Division of Aging, and that changes significantly in the future, whether I4A would propose some type of language that would support the creation of or expansion of this commission's advisory role to FSSA at large.
Got it.
Yes.
On aging services.
Okay. Yes. Okay. We will take that back. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Thanks for helping me. So there's really two issues, right? Expansion and making sure that specific language is not excluding waiver participants.
Correct.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It'd probably be good if you could read them because there's a lot of people in the room who aren't seeing the chat. And they just came to fix the sound, so hopefully it's better. Judith answered yes when you asked her about whether she was opposing removing all districts. Jennifer Lance, I'm in favor of removing congressional districts and like the expansion to provision of services, individuals or caregivers. Can you clarify why we need nonprofit for the housing? It would seem like it would be a benefit to have people more well connected to overall housing, like Dan mentioned. And then she also asked, would these changes assist in the overall time it takes to get appointments to the commission? I know right now it seems like a very long process to get members on the commission. So to Jennifer's question related to housing, we are basically trying to specify it needs to be a mission-based organization as opposed to a for-profit provider. We are more comfortable that a mission-based organization would more adequately represent interests of consumers and other nonprofits in the community, as opposed to providers that are solely, whose main focus is for private gain. So that's what we were trying to get at. If you have different language or do you have different language, or maybe you oppose that concept in general?
They're saying our sound.
Well, and to clarify too, my conversation about including landlords association members or home builders association members is simply because without them at the table, it would be very difficult to affect any kind of change. And so we will need their buy-in in order to be able to do many of the things that need to be done. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be at the table to shape, policy in that regard, but they certainly have to have input into the process.
I don't think, I think there could be wisdom to be more inclusive there too. I understand why this is being proposed this way. I just ask that be given a little more consideration, be a little broader. Yeah, I think we're trying to think about if we want to, there's a difference of creating the policy objectives versus getting the policy through the legislature, right? And we're trying to, from our perspective, we're trying to influence who gets to create the policy objectives. And we really we're trying to keep it focused from that mission base, from the consumer base. And so that's kind of why we put that language in there. So I don't know. I hear what you're saying. There's, to Dan's point, you really have to be able to influence some of the other players that influence whether something gets through the State House. Yeah. But I don't know that I don't know that we want those people actually guiding the policy objectives, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, so that's kind of where our thinking is on this.
Can you guys hear me?
It's difficult, it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how specific one wants to be. I mean, I know where you're going, but just to give a little more consideration.
Okay. I mean, it could be as simple as striking out the word nonprofit, but we also would have some concerns about, because we don't get to appoint. And that's the thing. Yeah. So one application comes in, it's somebody we really would not be happy with, but it gets appointed by the governor. And we're trying to put some guardrails around that. We'll think about it. Okay, there was another comment after that.
Jennifer, again, I would be careful to designate a nonprofit. We don't designate that for any other appointments.
Okay. Okay, so I will, Aaron or Julie, whoever's monitoring the chat, I'm hoping you can cut and paste the chat comments for me. So we have those, and then everybody's certainly willing to email me directly, call me up if you want to have a longer conversation. Again, this is not the final version of what would actually be filed. Okay, so any more comments on the Commission on Aging language? Okay, if we look at the next page, well, okay, the next page we get into the language about the choice board. Line 17. First of all, actually line 9, we are proposing to expand the choice board to a maximum of 17 members to accommodate the additional expertise we're seeking. We are not proposing to change any of the, this one doesn't quite have the same geographic distribution requirements, so we're not doing anything with that. Line 17 brings in the language around service recipient or caregiver of a service recipient, and this is specific to choice. So this would need to be a choice consumer because it is the choice board. The next page, lines 3 through 9, fill out the rest. And what we're proposing here is that we have an appointee from IHCDA, the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, to represent the housing interests. And again, a citizen nominated by one or more organizations that represent direct service workers and has statewide membership. So that really relates to who can appoint that, who can nominate that person. But it again gets at that direct service worker kind of thing. The remainder of the language was not ours. It was inserted by the LSA, who I think was just trying to stagger the terms. And sometimes when LSA puts that kind of stuff in there, it's because it's standard for commissions across the state government or boards across the state government. So we really didn't have any comment on that language, but you're certainly welcome to provide comment on it as well. And those would be lines 10 through 29. Anybody have any comment on this set of language?
I'll go over to the choice board today, I'm quite sure.
Yeah.
He's trying to ask if we have any comment from the commission side on the representation that's being proposed for the choice board.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Please keep the comments coming and we will take that into consideration. We will be back in, I think that is our first meeting in January. So we will definitely share the version that gets filed in January and let you know how things are going.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your interest in this. We need to pump this up a bit and get us more active. Sorry for this. But sorry for that phone call. But yes, we need attention to this because we have really been struggling to get a quorum so we can do our business, and we have some very important work to be done as we transition over to managed care. need to be doing what we need to be doing. So.
Yeah, and as we take a look, if we get this through and as we take a look at the membership, even though we've had technological glitches, the fact that these meetings can be hybrid, I think will really help expand the membership opportunities. So we may rely on current members of the boards or other organizations out in the field to help nominate some folks to fill these positions.
Do you have any suggestions for how we might help move some of this along? For some change here as it gets proposed. I don't know what headwinds we're going to run into here, but this is pretty.
So we will advise everybody what the bill number is and, keep people posted on when it's being heard. We are actually trying to get this embedded in a larger bill so that it's just kind of, I won't say overlooked, but it's not meant to be a big, hairy debate, right, at the legislature. So we kind of want to sink it into like a big health bill or a big FSSA bill, and we're trying to identify the legislature that will carry the legislation as part of that. So we are not anticipating headwinds.
You are not.
No.
Well, I just want to say, I think for anyone running for office, we have such a large number of older adults in Indiana, and it's really going to be in any legislator's best interest to make these changes as they move along work well. So if there's, just saying anything we can do to help people understand this a little bit better, because it'd be hard when, people aren't going to the nursing home the way they've been going to the nursing home. We needed to make change. Just don't hear me differently on that, but it's going to be hard for people all of a sudden because we don't have adult day centers. There's things we don't have. And families are going to be like, what am I going to do? I can't do this, and so forth. So it's in their best interest to be supportive with trying to help develop this change as best and as supportive as possible with aging in the community. I like your idea, Dan, and what was brought up today. This whole aging in community thing means we have to stand up and do some things in our communities differently. Be in the legislator's best interest, or they'll be getting lots of phone calls. Thank you so much.
So we will keep everybody posted when it gets filed, when there's hearings. We'll let you know how you can weigh in with your own legislators if you want to send along some discussion or words of support to your own legislators with that. So thank you. Okay, so I just want to highlight a few things from our regular kind of what's happening in the world packet. We've all, like a lot of other folks in federal and state government, have been watching the federal budget debates. And so far, this threat of shutdown has been staved off again, and the House has passed a plan with bipartisan votes, and we're waiting on the federal Senate to also pass that plan. What it does is it basically extends the continuing resolution, I think through sometime in January. So to give more time for the actual bill that was supposed to be passed in time prior to the start of the federal fiscal year, October 1st. But that's a whole other debate. Right now, we're just trying to keep the government open. So that's a little bit of update on page 1 of your packet. Moving down from there, there is a legislative update from U.S. Aging that talks about, so at this time, we're trying to keep the government open, but the actual appropriation bills have to be written. So there's kind of two things happening. And so far in the Appropriations Committee, while they have not increased the amount for the Older Americans Act, it looks like they have not decreased it significantly. They stuck to last year's funding. So in this environment, that might actually be a win. We'll just kind of have to see how that plays out as appropriation bills start getting debated at the beginning of next year. And what that would do is, if we're having a continuing resolution right now, it means things really won't change from the continuing resolution to moving into the actual appropriation. Because a CR keeps things funded at the same level as the previous year. And that's what this House proposal does as well. So, it's not the increases we need, but it's also not a big splash. So we'll see what happens with that. I'll keep you posted. Andrew mentioned the Adult Protective Services regulations. I've got a summary in your packet from ACL as to those regulations, as well as the actual proposed regulation itself. It's not really that long. When you look at, by the way, federal regulations go, it's just kind of a laundry list of things the states need to do. And it's very high level. So it doesn't actually necessarily tell states how they have to run their APS programs. It tells them, very specifically, like, here's how you have to structure it, and kind of all the details a state would go through. But it does set minimum requirements around reporting and training and conflict of interest and things like that. Okay. So further down in your packet, we actually share with you what I4A's priorities are for this coming legislative session. And we've talked about our interests in helping to shape the Commission on Aging and choice boards to be more responsive to the current issues we're facing. So that's kind of key. Another thing we're trying to do is decouple the choice reimbursement rates from the Medicaid rates, so that AAAs could vary the rates by county based on their ability to attract providers. So that will be something that, again, has a preliminary draft attached to it. And it really would be, we're not saying what the rate should be. It would just be permissive and allowing a AAA to negotiate additional rates to assure an adequate provider network. In addition, we are proposing 2 items for legislative study over the summer, and one would be housing opportunities within Medicaid home and community based service waivers, as well as potentially Medicaid state plan. But there's a lot happening across the country related to housing supports and actual housing cost payments, and using Medicaid dollars to do that in order to assure better health outcomes. So it's all tied to that health outcome, but there is a growing recognition in CMS that you're not going to get the good health outcomes unless people are stably housed. And the other one would be legislative study around community health workers and AAAs and the aging network, trying to educate legislators on why it's important to support community health workers. And currently, there is some reimbursement in Medicaid for community health workers. We think it could be broader, but it's not a budget session. So we're just kind of focusing on that legislative study right now to prime the pump potentially for another look down the road. So those are what we're going to be working on this session. And then the preliminary draft is included in your packet again. And then I think the other big reveal is that we've included our own housing paper that we've started working on last December, with bringing people from around the state together to talk about housing issues affecting older adults and people with disabilities. And We've documented ideas that came from that conversation, as well as ideas that have come in from the other streams of housing work. And it's really meant to create a framework about moving policy forward. There are some comments about specific ideas or specific models, but it's really more about how do we get more flexible and responsive policy. It's also not meant to be a singular legislative agenda. We're kind of throwing out a lot of ideas that came up from these discussions and inviting everybody to take a look at it and see what their role is. So one of the things that we took out of this idea or report was expanding the Commission on Aging and Choice Boards to include housing expertise, as well as the legislative study around housing and Medicaid. So that's what we thought we could move forward in this session. But there's certainly all kinds of things you can look at in there. And so there's like a one-page executive summary that will give you the highlights. But really keep in mind, it's meant to be really high level. It's meant to encourage greater cross-pollination between aging services and housing developers, et cetera. So that's where that whole paradigm is coming from. And let's see what else is in here. The Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority also published their future development of affordable assisted living facility feasibility study. And this was required by a bill that was in the legislature last year. This came out of it was moved forward by assisted living providers and kind of shepherded by the Indiana Healthcare Association. And when you actually, I think I've just got the announcement or just the report in there, but there are appendices to the report that have a lot of really interesting county level data. So if you're able to find the report on IHCD's, actually, I think it's posted with the legislature because it had to be delivered to the state legislature. So if you look in on the General Assembly webpage and know where to find those reports, you can find this as well as all the appendices. One of their primary focuses was how do we create more opportunities for people living in smaller counties, like 50,000 to 100,000 residents, as opposed to larger counties. And kind of the headline is that, yeah, it's really hard because they can't get the scale they need to cover the operational funding. And there really aren't any good sources of development and operational subsidy in the state right now that help to facilitate that. So there were some comments about, well, how could we move some of that forward with new kinds of development subsidies or things like that. So that's kind of the discussion that's that contained. They talked a lot about, they also kind of surveyed where there were current facilities versus where there aren't any. So there's some commentary there about market. And even if you're looking at new assisted living facilities, even going into, like, for example, a major urban area, they're really looking, targeting that low and moderate income population, which there's, continues to be a real gap, whether or not you're on Medicaid waiver or not. If you're on Medicaid waiver, you're actually in a better position than a lot of other people related to getting into assisted living. So, they're really trying to kind of look at that gap. And, the commentary here was that it's hard, and provided some insight on that. We are still waiting the results of the housing study that IHCDA is working on in general related to the needs for older adult housing. And that's supposed to be, I think, released sometime next year. Finally, given the time, the rest of the packet, there are some longer articles in there from the New York Times who has done a series, what they're calling an investigative series on what's available to help people age in community, right? What services are out there, et cetera. And really pointing to the high cost of long-term services and supports and how are we all supposed to manage this when there's not enough resources or help available. And so I included the 3 articles that had been posted from the New York Times that might be an interesting read, might be interesting for some of the organizations you work with. Okay. So I'll stop there.
Kristen, thank you so much. I have another thought, just as we kind of end today on the proposal for the changes in the commission and the choice board. In fact, it's connected to an earlier conversation I had. You address in there the need for representation. I think it's on the choice board, but I don't think so. Having a medical person there, a healthcare person there, or a nursing person.
Drug service worker?
Well, it's in there somewhere. What I'm going to suggest is, as we try to bring together traditional healthcare and social care, it's kind of what we're doing here with this. We are still not having behavioral health care as part of this. So I am kind of sending that back in as a suggestion to see how we might bring somebody from that sector in here. It's like our brain's not part of who we are, and it's crazy. And to me, I don't understand why dementia care is not part of what you do in behavioral health. I've worked in that for years. If you can't do depression, delirium, and dementia, you can't do your job. I'm sorry, just go on and on. But anyway, I just wanted to throw out the idea of behavioral health in there somehow or other. We have high suicide rates with particularly older men who are successful in completing it. So just throwing that out there as an idea.
Okay, well, we'll take that back as well.
Okay, everyone, we've had a full day. Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you, everyone. It's been a really informative day. A lot of good work going on, a lot of good work yet to do. Thank you, everyone, and we will meet again in January.